Khilafat movement for the protection of the institution of Khilafat. When the First World War broke out in the 1914, the circumstances compelled the Ottoman Empire to fight against the Allies. Turkey, the seat of Khilafat, therefore fought by side of Germany. The Indian Muslims naturally attacked their sympathies with their Turkish brothers. The government adopted a stern policy to keep the Muslims of India under control and did not allow them to raise any voice in support of Khalifa, the Sultan of Turkey. The Muslims of India had a proud history of coming to immediate help to their suppressed brethren in any time of need. They extended maximum support to the Turks and the Arabs in the Tripoli and Balkan wars. The First World War ended in 1918 with the Allies emerging as conquerors. The victorious Allied were bent upon demolishing the Ottoman Caliphate of Turkey, which had fought by the side of Germany. They were determined to scrap the sick men of Europe in order to distribute among themselves the spoils of the splendid empire, which had ruled a greater part of Europe. The Indian Muslims were greatly perturbed over the fate of Turkey and desired that a respectable rapprochement be concluded between the British and Turkey. The results of the war had placed the Indian Muslims in an extremely awkward situation. They were not prepared to see any humiliation of the Caliphate and at the same time could not afford to pick up confrontation with the government. So there was formed a Khilafat committee. During the war, the Indian Muslims had extended maximum support to the Turks. When the war ended, the Muslims demanded that justice be done to the falling Muslim regime. In order to put pressure on the government for the protection of the Khilafat, the Muslims organized themselves under the leadership of Hakim Ajmal Khan and Dr. M.A. Ansari and formed Khilafat Conference. The Khilafat Conference in its meeting on 24th November 1980 declared that the Muslims of India would not take part in the peace celebrations if their demands were not conceded by the government. The Ali brothers Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar and Maulana Shaukat Ali Johar were in jail. When they were released, they issued to Amritsar, where Khilafat Conference, the Congress and the Muslim League were holding their sessions. A Khilafat committee was set up with Maulana Shaukat Ali as its secretary to conduct the movement for the safeguard of the institution of Khilafat. The entire responsibility of safeguarding the sacred institution fell on Ali brothers. The Indian deputation calls on Viceroy. When the war ended, it was felt that Turkey, which fought against the Allies, would be dismembered and distributed amongst the victorious Allies countries. The Indian Muslims were not prepared to see the dismemberment of Turkey at all costs and therefore informed the government about their sentiments. Under these circumstances, the Khilafat Conference decided to send a representative deputation of Hindus, Muslims, and people from other walks of life to the Viceroy to apprise him of the sentiments of the Indian people with regard to the dismemberment of Turkey. The deputation, headed by Dr. M.A. Ansari, called on the Viceroy on 19th January 1920. The deputation made it clear in a straightforward manner that they would not tolerate the humiliation of the Khalifa and of the sacred places in Turkey. They informed him that the British policy towards Turkey constituted a great threat to the peace in the subcontinent. They urged the government not to take any such actions which may inflame the sentiments of the Muslim subjects of the British Empire. The deputation therefore required from the government an assurance that the institution of Caliphate would not be demolished and that due respect would be shown for the sacred places of the Muslims in Turkey. The deputation further urged that no portion of Jaziratul Arab could be chopped off to reduce the status of any state because it contained the holy places of Islam and therefore be resisted against any alien interference. The Viceroy promised that the sentiments of the Indian people and particularly of the Muslims shall be given due consideration and that no harm shall be done to the Caliphate and the sacred places of the Muslims. He, however, made it known to the deputation that religious matters should be kept away from the political affairs and it was not a good policy to involve religion to put political pressure. The war ended on 11th November 1918 and a peace armistice was concluded between the Allies and the Turkey on 13 November 1980. The terms of this agreement were humiliating for Turkey, who was dictated to accept the terms and conditions given by the Allies. Turkey was divided into parts and Turkish army was disintegrated. All Turkish vessels were captured and the railways income was fixed for the Allies. The Allies were to determine new borders of Turkey and the internal administration was to be handled by Turkey itself. The Allies took every step to eliminate the religious places of Islam in Turkey. The Treaty of Sivas. The war finally ended and peace was made through the Treaty of Sivas in 1920, which shocked the Indian Muslims. The harsh terms of the treaty made it clear to the Indian Muslims that the victorious Allies were not content with the dismemberment of the Ottoman Empire, but were determined to destroy even the Turkish homeland. To Indian Muslims, the treaty appeared to be a deliberate attempt by the Christian community to exterminate forever the political power of Islam as symbolized by the Khilafat. The Indian Muslims, to their utter disappointment, found that Turkey has been divided and distributed among the victorious allies as the war bounty. It was decided by the Treaty of Sivas that the allies could occupy any part of Turkey at will. The new state of Armenia was established and Syria, Iraq and Jordan would be separated from the Turkish Empire. Western Anatolia and Samarna were handed over to Greece. With the dismemberment of Turkey, the institution of Khilafat was also to be demolished. The Muslims were not happy over the development in Turkey and were particularly saddened over the naked betrayal by the government. A large-scale hue and cry erupted in India on the shameful terms of the Treaty of Sivas. The Muslim leaders called upon the Viceroy, Lord Chelmsford, and urged that the degrading terms of the treaty be withdrawn. They made it clear to the Viceroy that if the terms of the treaty were not withdrawn, a non-cooperation movement against the government would be launched. The Viceroy paid no heed to this warning. The Muslims decided to launch a movement for the safeguard of the institution of Caliphate and to express their resentment over the actions the Allies had taken in Turkey. The dynamic leadership of Ali brothers Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad and other religious leaders flared up the deep anxiety of the Muslim masses, which surpassed all previous limits of lying sacrifices for a national cause. Khilafat Delegation. The Khilafat Committee met on 23rd November 1919 and decided to send a delegation under the leadership of Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar to England to apprise the government about the sentiments of the people. The delegation included Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar, Sayyid Suleiman Nadwi, Dr. Sayyid Hussain and Malak Hassan Hayat, who was to act as secretary of the delegation. The delegation left Bombay for the England in May 1920. Muhammad Shoaib Qureshi and Abdul Rahman joined the delegation in London. On arrival in London, Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar gave a number of interviews and expressed his determination that the Turks should not lose their independence and Istanbul remains as the seat of Khilafat. Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar said that sheer injustice had been done to the Turks, who were not given a chance to present their case. He urged that their grave injustice done to the Turks must be rectified and their old position should be restored. The delegation remained that the Muslims wanted justice with the Turks in the light of the 14 points of US President Wilson and Mr. Lloyd George's speech in the House of Commons on January 6, 1980, by which he pledged to maintain the sanctity and freedom of the homelands of Islam in Arabia and Turkey. During delegation's stay in London, the Asquith ministry gave way to George government. Maulana Muhammad Ali met the Prime Minister Lloyd George, who was known for his anti-Muslim sentiments. Maulana Muhammad Ali reminded George of the promises the British government had made with the Indian Muslims about the Caliphate and the sacred places in Turkey. Maulana Muhammad Ali impressed upon him the importance of solving the Turkish problem in a statesman-like manner. The Prime Minister refused to accept any argument and instead expressed that Turkey should not be excused. On Maulana Muhammad Ali's insistence that Turkey should get justice, Lord George replied with visible satire and radical that Turkey must get justice and will certainly get justice, similar to that which Germany received. The Khilafat delegation, disappointed and dejected, returned to India without achieving its purpose. Maulana Muhammad Ali while leaving for India on September 2, 1920, warned the British government and said, "The days of empire are over, but the British Commonwealth can survive if it is based on people's will. History of Ireland is before us. What would have satisfied Ireland 7 or even 3 years ago does not satisfy her today. Muslims can yet be won over. Tomorrow it would be too late in their cause as well." Non-cooperation movement. The Hindus under the leadership of Gandhi came forward with their full support for the Khilafat movement. Gandhi, being a shrewd politician, had visualized to use the Khilafat agitation for pressing the government to come to terms for Indian independence. Whether the Muslims won or lost on Khilafat issue was immaterial to Gandhi. What mattered was the purpose the movement could be made to serve. He therefore advocated full support by entire Indian nation of the Muslim demands and outlined a program of non-cooperation for the achievement of dual objective of Indian independence and restoration of the Khilafat. The plan was to paralyze the administration by a complete boycott of British institutions and goods. Indians were asked to give up government service, renounce titles, boycott courts of law, walk out of schools and colleges, and take no part in elections which were to be held under Montagu Chems for reforms of 1990. Gandhi assured the people that if they carried out his program of non-cooperation in a united, disciplined and non-violent fashion, they would soon attain Swaraj self-rule within a year. Gandhi's personality greatly appealed to Hindu sentiments who come together under his leadership. The enthusiasm of the Muslims was already in a state of agitated Khilafat in Turkey. Congress at a special session adopted the non-cooperation program and later reaffirmed it at its Nagpur session in December 1920. The Quaid-e-Azam, however, was not in favor of Gandhi's non-cooperation program. As to him, the plan was bound to invite violence and eventually would lead to disastrous confusion. He resigned from the Congress Party in 13th April 1923. The political scene in India after launching the non-cooperation movement abruptly changed. For some time in the beginning, the Hindus and Muslims forgot their long-standing animosities. The prolific leadership of Ali brothers carried the message of unity everywhere. Everything foreign was rejected, the foreign cloth was burned, and khadar became the dress of even the most westernized society. The charkha of spinning wheel became the symbol of the Indian freedom. The Muslims followed the non-cooperation with zealous participation. The ulama pronounced service under the British as un-Islamic. The Ali brothers led a siege around the Muslim University of Aligarh to carry out the educational boycott. During this, there was started a Hijrat movement. Maulana Muhammad Ali had been in jail since he returned back from England after his unsuccessful mission. He was released from jail in 1924 along with the other Khilafat leaders. They stepped in a different world. The country was presenting a horrible picture and the Khilafat leaders were extremely disappointed and pained to see the awful state of Indian society. Maulana Abu al-Kalam and Maulana Abdul Bari, the two prominent Khilafat leaders, issued fatwa that India was a Darul Harb, home of war, where the religion of Muslim Islam was not safe. They urged the Muslims to migrate to a place where their image and religion was not jeopardized. Maulana Muhammad Ali declared the British government as an infidel government no longer to be obeyed. He also asked the Muslims to leave the country where infidelity prevailed and go to the place where the Muslims found it possible to live according to their religion. With the issuance of this fatwa, nearly 18,000 Muslims left hearth and home and migrated to Afghanistan in religious protest against British policy toward the Caliphate. The Afghan government welcomed the migrants in the beginning but refused to accept as the influx of the refugees increased beyond control. The Afghan government sent back the refugees. A large number of the refugees perished on the way back home and those who survived reached home to find themselves homeless and doomed forever. The poor faithful people who blindly responded to the call by their religious leaders had disposed of their belongings on whatever was offered to them with the hope of a better future. When they came back, they found themselves shelterless and without a respectable tenants. Their leaders had nothing to offer to them in their distress and left them in the lurch. Mopla uprising. Some Arab tribes known as Moplas had settled on the Malabar shores by faith. They were Muslims. They invited government annoyance by actively taking part in the Khilafat movement. The government adopted repressive measures in order to quell the Moplas' activities, which furthered Moplas' resentment. The government arrested a few Moplahs who wanted to go to Kerala to organize Khilafat movement. The arrest of the leaders inflamed the sentiment of Moplahs who demanded the release of their leaders. Police resorted to firing on a mob, killing nearly 400 persons. The incident created large-scale unrest in the country. The Moplahs rose in rebellion against the government to set up a Khilafat state and slaughtered a number of British officers and their Hindu neighbors. The agitation took the most ugly turn when the Moplahs raided the prison to release their leaders. The Moplahs remained involved in a guerrilla warfare with the government. The government ultimately suppressed the uprising. Strict action was taken against the Moplahs after the rebellion was brought under control. A large number of Moplahs were arrested and deported in a goods train. When the train reached the destination, 60% were found dead due to suffocation in the tight compartments of the goods train. Chora Chori tragedy. Gandhi had assumed the leadership of the Khilafat movement as most of the Khilafat leaders were in jail. Gandhi was not sincere toward the restoration of Khilafat. He in fact used the Khilafat movement as a tool to achieve Swaraj, self-rule, for which he had extended cooperation for the Khilafat cause. Gandhi intended to begin his civil disobedience movement in the beginning of 1922 from a small town of Chura Churi in Farrukhabad district. Under the civil disobedience movement, all government taxes and revenues were not to be paid. The people of Churachuri demonstrated in a form of procession on 5th February 1922 and refused to pay government taxes. The police tried to disperse the procession, which infuriated sitting processionists. The hostile mob set fire to the police station, where 22 policemen were burnt alive. This violent incident shocked Gandhi and he immediately called off the non-cooperation movement without consulting other leaders. Gandhi, while ending his non-cooperation movement, said that the people were not yet ready for the way of non-violence. The non-cooperation movement had been foreseen by the Qaid-e-Azam, led to widespread and irresponsible violence. The sudden reversal produced bewilderment amongst the dismayed Muslims, who were left baffled and frustrated. The people gradually felt if the non-cooperative movement would have been allowed to continue despite the Chura-Churi incident, the British government would have been compelled to make major concessions. In the following years, violent communal riots between Hindus and Muslims erupted, which marred the Indian politics. The two communities once again were faced to each other with their conventional enmity. The amicability and the harmonious spirit achieved at Lucknow in 1916 and the spirit of non-cooperation movement were the things of the glorious past, which could never be recaptured again in the future. For the Muslims, the Khilafat movement ended in complete failure. The reaction on Gandhi's betrayal amongst the Muslims was bitter and strong. They felt betrayed at the eve of victory. But there were still bigger shocks for them to come. The institution of Khilafat, for which the Muslims had struggled so sincerely, was abolished not by the enemies but by a Muslim hero, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who established a nationalist government in Turkey. The Grand National Assembly of Turkey, under the influence of Kemal Ataturk, abolished the institution of Caliphate on November 1, 1922. That last Khalifa, Sultan Abdul Majid, was banished from Turkey in 1924. The Indian Muslims were stunned on the action of Ataturk, under whose leadership the Turkey decided to make a new start. The movement was in disarray, as most of the Khilafah leaders were in jail. Muslims became almost leaderless. They drifted aimlessly on the high seas of Indian politics. The people did not know what to do. The sacrifices of the people were doomed and appear to have been in vain. The Khilafat movement ended without achieving its goal. The Indian politics had entered into a new era and was presenting a shabby scene. The Hindu-Muslim unity and brotherhood were the things of the past, and people once again were moving within their traditional narrow-mindedness. Some Hindu leaders had started a movement for converting the Muslims to Hinduism, which provided a new cause of bitterness. Over the next few years, Hindu-Muslim riots erupted at a number of places. The political climate in the country was that of a general apathy. Results of the Khilafat movement. Despite its failure, the Khilafat movement left a far-reaching impact on the Indian politics. It created political awareness amongst the Muslims and taught them ways and means to project and protect their interests. The Khilafat movement, in spite of its failure, was a great movement of the Muslims with a number of significant factors leading to Muslims' awareness and renaissance. The Khilafat movement significance influences on Muslims by many means. The Khilafat movement was a great Muslim struggle which provided dynamic leadership to the Muslims and established foundation to launch further Muslim freedom movement on stable and firm basis. The whole of Khilafat movement was erected on the Hindu-Muslim unity, which proved to be a fake idea when Gandhi unilaterally ended his non-cooperation movement at the time when the government was to kneel down before the demands. The sudden decision of Gandhi caused an anxiety amongst the bewildered Muslim masses who felt betrayed at the eve of victory. It confirmed to the Muslim that the Hindu mind can never be sincere to the Muslim cause. Gandhi's action was instrumental to finish and destroy the Hindu-Muslim unity, which had been accomplished through the sincere endeavors of the Quaid-e-Azam. With Gandhi assuming the leadership, the Khilafat movement turned into a purely political struggle, thus putting aside the prime objective of protecting the institution of Khilafat. Gandhi in fact had no attachment with the Khilafat. He wanted to use the Khilafat agitation to press the government to give sovereign self-rule to India. The Khilafat movement effectively demonstrated the religious enthusiasm of the Muslims to British. The British now seriously felt of giving independence to India. The ulema and mashaykh worked as a well-knit team during the Khilafat movement. They provided organized leadership to the nation and stirred their religious zeal by their speeches. The Khilafat movement also cultivated a new outlook amongst the Muslims not to rely on other support and to wholly depend on self-determination for the achievement of national cause. The Khilafat movement played an effective role in eliminating un-Islamic trends and concepts from the religion and politics due to its religious and political impact. The Khilafat movement developed a sense of concern amongst the Muslims about their national matters and included among them awareness about their future. The failure of Khilafat movement is fell on Gandhi and other leaders. It is the case of Khilafat movement.